Sorry about the delay. My name is Councillor James Pasternak. I'm the chair of the General Government Management Committee. Clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'd like to now call meeting 2 to order. Today's meeting is being held with members of council and city staff participating by both video conference and in person at City Hall and Committee Room 1. City Hall is open to the public and anyone is welcome to attend the meeting in Committee Room 1 at City Hall today. The public may continue to participate electronically via video conference and can watch this meeting live at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. Clerk staff have connected registered speakers to the meeting by video conference, and the list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the General Government Committee's page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. I ask for everyone's patience if we experience any delays or technical problems during the meeting. City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff will be available to help members in person and remotely if you need help with your devices. Members, when voting on an item or motion, I ask you to keep your video on. Raise your hand to indicate your vote. Members, I want to remind you that you must still submit and approve your motions by email. And of course, staff are available at ggc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. It is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hand and unmute your mic. I do not see any. Could I please have a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting on January the 20th, 2023? Councillor Holliday, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. So why don't we go through the agenda, and we will put one walk-on item on the agenda at the end. So we have two statutory timed items, item 2.1 and 2.2 for 9:45. We are past that time, but let's go through the whole agenda and see what we're dealing with today. 2.3, amendment to blanket contract with Toromont Material Handling Division of Toromont Industries.
Hold, please.
Councillor Perks holding 2.3. .4, amendment to blanket contract with London Machinery, supply and delivery of Mack cab over truck chassis, tandem axle, refuge loading packer body.
Hold.
Hold for Councillor Perks. Item 2.5, amendment to blanket contract with Peter Young Limited for grounds maintenance services at various city locations. I don't see anyone holding the item. I'll move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2.6, amendment to blanket contracts with Standard Mechanical Systems for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning maintenance and repairs. Anyone like to hold that item? Vice Chair Holliday, would you like to move that item? 2.6? All those in favor? Opposed? Staff recommendations adopted. 2.7, amendment to contracts with Transworld Systems Canada with Partners in Credit Inc. and with CBV Collection Services for the Collection Services Provincial Offences Act fines for court services. I wouldn't want to get a call from these guys. Anyone want to hold the item? Okay, moved by Vice Chair Holliday. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2.8, amendment to purchase order issue to Yardi Canada to develop a housing provider web-based portal. I'm going to hold the item. Item 2.9, amendments to various purchase orders for rehabilitation upgrades at Ashbridges Bay and Humber treatment plants.
Hold, please.
Held by Councillor Perks. Should remind people the snowstorm is on the way, and unless we want to be known as the Shackleton Expedition, encased in City Hall for the next 1,500 years, we should move the meeting along. Actually, is Barbara Gray in the room? Are those trucks out there? Yes, no, we got to
She is. We're all ready to go, Counselor.
Yeah, let's get those trucks rolling.
They're rolling.
Great stuff. 2.10, amendment to purchase order with WSP Canada Incorporated for the detailed design of the John Street corridor improvements.
Hold, please.
And 211, award of Ariba document for CH2M Hill Canada Limited and Stantec Consulting for professional engineering services for Phase 5 of the basement flooding protection program.
Hold.
Item 2.12, contract award for professional engineering services support the delivery of Toronto Water's coordinated standalone water main replacement program Ariba document number. Would anyone like to hold that item? I will move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 13, award to multiple suppliers for collection services per Provincial. Held by Vice Chair Holliday. Item 14, emergency non-competitive contract with Clearway Construction Limited Rescue, a micro-tunneling boring machine on Old Mill Drive.
Hold.
Yes, I've got it under your name, if that's the question.
No, may I advise you that I may need to go into camera on
Yeah,
this item?
me too.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 15, non-competitive bridge contract for supply and delivery of groceries for long-term care homes.
Hold.
Number 16, non-competitive contract with Midome Construction Services Limited for new streetcar tracks on Adelaide.
Hold.
Number 17, non-competitive contract with Orange Traffic Inc. for supply and delivery of traffic signal controllers. I don't see anyone holding the item. I'll move the staff recommendations. And this actually does go to council. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 18, non-competitive contract with Traffic Logics Corporation for watcher speed signs for the Vision Zero Road Safety Plan.
Hold.
Sounds like a tie. And number 19, 240 Alton Tower Circle, designation of a portion of the property as a municipal capital facility. Okay, I'll move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 20, proposed governance change in respect to retirement compensation arrangement for certain members of the Metropolitan Toronto Police Benefit Fund. Just as an FYI, under recommendation 1B, okay, I'm going to hold that item. There's a small typo that has to be corrected. Item 20. We have to correct the wording. Item number 21, disposition of 13 Barberry Place. I'll move the staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 22, below market rent lease agreement with Toronto Cat Rescue at 705 Progress Avenue, Unit 15, designation of the premises as a municipal capital facility. Councillor Matlow, did you want to hold that? No?
Just to move it.
Okay, Councillor Matlow is moving the, what we call the cat in the hat motion, number 22. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Number 23, request for authority to enter into a non-competitive agreement with OpenText Corporation, leveraging the Provincial Volume Licensing Agreement. Councillor Holyday is moving the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 24, extension of agreement for the provision of electrical and mechanical show services for events and exhibitions at Exhibition Place due to COVID-19 pandemic. Councillor Bravo, would you like to move that item? Okay, item staff recommendations, or actually it's the Board of Governors of Exhibition Place recommendations, moved by Councillor Bravo. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 25, use of temporary delegated authority regarding procurement-related activities during Council's 2022 municipal election recess.
Hold.
Held by Councillor Perks. Number 26, update on the confirmation program's remediation. It's like Jeopardy. Okay, we have an added item, a walk-on item by Councillor Fletcher. I hope everyone's seen the letter. So this first vote here is really just to add it to the agenda. You haven't seen it? It hasn't been circulated.
No, it's in the, no, it wouldn't be circulated. We'll have to turn it on and then it'll be in the system.
Do you want to turn it on and then we can adopt it? Or that we can put it on the agenda? Okay.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, so it hasn't been fully circulated, so we're going to circulate this item. It's a report back on a corporate services issue, a real estate issue. So once it's circulated, we'll add it to the, we'll take a vote to add it to the agenda.
You're going to take a vote to add it to the agenda.
And then when the item comes up, we discuss the item.
Right.
It should be up.
Okay, I'm told it should be in CMP in the next 60 seconds.
Yeah, it was sent in early enough for that.
Pardon me, Chair, on a point of order as well, just for meeting management. The item I did hold on the confirmation program may also require to go into camera.
Which number is that?
That's GG 2.26. It has a confidential attachment.
CMP.
And I will endeavor to get the question answered without going into camera, but just in case, I wanted to flag that with you.
Okay, so what we want to do, there's two items that we could go in camera. We want to deal with both at the same time. Okay, we're going to go to our two timed items. Item 2.1, apportionment of property taxes, March 3rd, 2023 hearing. Are there any speakers, either online or in the room, that are speaking to 2.1, the apportionment of property taxes? There's not. Are there any questions for staff? Councillor Perks.
Yes, thank you. Let me just dig out my notes here. Okay, so If I understand this correctly, sometimes when a property gets severed, MPAC doesn't get the information in time for the new calendar year, and we have to go through a complicated process of trying to recover the difference between what we have been taxing and what we should have been taxing because it's been split, and that this recommendation is to write a bunch of it off. Is that sort of right?
Through you, Mr. Chair, and Councillor Perks, the taxes themselves are split between the former parcel and the new parcel in the same, so we recover the same amount. What is being written off is the interest that has accumulated since the original parcel couldn't be collected on. So council has directed us previously to write off interest that accumulates in that sort of intervening period until we can get the right tax bill to the right property.
And in some instances, if I've read the report correctly, where there was, where the severance occurred, a condominium corporation took one of the properties, they've developed it and disappeared, and there's no one to get the taxes from.
That's why we apportion the taxes, because the original developer may no longer be around. They form a shell corporation and we can't recover from them, so we recover from the new parcels that make up the old parcel.
Okay, so it seems to me there are two opportunities here to manage this better, and I just want to test that with you. First, given that it's Metrolinx's job, or sorry, MPAC's job, I get all the bad provincial agencies mixed up, it's MPAC's job to inform us, and they failed in that. Do they have any responsibilities to the city when they don't give us correct property records?
No, it usually is a question of timing when a property can be added to the tax roll. So a property that is in the midst of construction, MPAC won't return it as the new properties until it's substantially complete.
I see.
So it really is a timing issue here. Oh. MPAC, actually, they've improved substantially on the delays that we used to experience in getting those new parcels. Now, MPAC is right on top of these things. We usually get them within 3 to 6 months of completion.
That's good to hear. The second thing is when a property gets severed, it has to go through a municipal process. It has to be approved by the Committee of Adjustment, if I recall correctly. I know that with certain kinds of approvals, we typically can attach conditions about paying this and that and getting letters of credits to guarantee. Could we build in a process when there's a severance happening so we don't have the condominium corporation disappear on us? Is that something we could consider?
We have considered that, Councillor, and through the chair, we have considered that in the past about condominium processes, the condominium development process to build in safeguards. The only issue that we have is the severance approval and the development approval takes place much in advance, and then the building gets built. We don't know that we need to apportion the taxes until we find that the taxes are not being paid. So if a developer is doing the right thing, they get their approval to sever the property, they build the property, they convey the individual units to the new owners. If everybody does what they're supposed to, and there's the developer is paying his tax in the meantime, and the new owners start paying their taxes, there isn't a problem, doesn't require an apportionment. It's only when there is not payment that we use the apportionment process as a collection method.
Could we put in some boilerplate in severance approvals that would protect us? Like, it would only be triggered occasionally, but it would, is there something we could consider to protect us in that instance?
Yes, again, the thing is a question of timing and the timing of when the approval is given for the severance.
Yes.
But the tax, to the city's perspective, is always recoverable. It's always attached to the property. We feel it is fairly secure that we will get those taxes, whether it's the developer that's paying or a subsequent owner or a subsequent owner after that. The taxes run with the land, so we're really at low risk of not collecting the taxes.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. That was your last question. Any other questions for staff? I don't see any speakers. Councillor Perks?
I'm not going to move a motion on this, but I do think that there's a principle here, which is you buy a condominium unit from somebody, they have been negligent in paying their taxes, and you're on the hook. And it would seem to me, and I don't know how to pursue this, or if this is the right committee, it would seem to me that we could build a safeguard in to help protect future owners from that. Perhaps I'll deal with some correspondence to yourself and the chief planner to see if we can build a safeguard in there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Perks. Any other speakers on the item? Okay, I will move staff recommendations to approve the apportionment. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 2.2, second statutory meeting, cancellation, reduction of refunded property taxes. Are there questions of staff? Are there any deputants in the room on this item? Item 2.2, we don't have any listed. No. Questions of staff? Speakers? Councillor Mallow, would you like to move the recommendations? That so moved? Okay, so moved by Councillor Matlow. All those in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? That is carried. Item 2.3. Item 2.3,
You had a motion on item
I have questions.
technical,
two, the technical motion.
I do apologize. There's been a request from staff to move a technical motion on item 2.2. Move to reopen. Councillor Holliday, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We'll put the technical amendment on the screen. Everyone can take a quick look at it. There we go. Okay. We're all good? Okay, Councillor Matlow, would you like to remove the item?
I hereby remove.
You remove.
Or
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, we're all good. All those in favor as amended? Opposed? That is carried. I took it as a package? Okay. 2.3, held by Councillor Perks. This is Toromont Industries for supply and delivery of lift trucks. Councillor Perks, questions of staff?
Yeah. So if I understand this one correctly, I'm going to have to say that a lot because I'm, just learning this committee. What this seeks to do is to ask for $4 million in additional funding, $4.5 million for additional funding for the purchase of these lift trucks. And the explanation given is that the costs per unit have gone up because of global supply chain challenges, production impacts of global supply chain, component shortages, labor shortages, and increased freight costs. Here's the part I don't understand. So we have a contract with this vendor to get a certain number of lift trucks at a certain price. Their costs have changed and we're just going to pay them more?
So through the chair, the largest issue with respect and the biggest reason why we need this purchase order amendment is due to the planning of these assets and the fact that we only use 2022 requirements. In addition to that, we do see escalations in pricing based on global supply chain issues and the premiums associated with the electric versions of these assets. So the amendment, the key reason why the amendment is needed is due to the under-planning of the number of assets that we needed to replace.
I see. And then the rest of it is just narrative for why the price is higher than it was last year. Okay,
Correct.
good, thank you. That's all I had on that one. I can move it if no one else.
Any other questions for staff on the item? I just have one quick one to finance. Under a purchase order system, normally you do a purchase order, so you lock in the price, you lock in the terms, and it really can't be open. No bill can be paid above that purchase order amount. How do we get around that? Because this seems to be a common theme to this committee and infrastructure and environment.
So, Councillor, or through you, Mr. Chair, can I ask you to clarify the question a little bit? How do we find fewer situations where this has to come to committee, or?
Well, I'm just saying a purchase order system, the whole philosophy behind a purchase order system is you're locking in the terms of a pricing arrangement.
Yes.
Yet it's something that's extremely difficult to reopen, but it seems to be reopened with a lot of regularity here and at infrastructure environment, certainly through our purchasing policy. I'm just wondering, is there that latitude in our purchase order agreements to do that? Are they not tight enough?
So through you, Councillor, bringing them forward to this and infrastructure, of course, is a control mechanism for council to ensure they understand when a particular contract or agreement is not either sufficient or long enough. So I think certainly while they are regular to these committees, there's obviously thousands and thousands of purchase orders that don't require amendment.
Okay, all right, we'll leave it at that. I'll move the recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item is 2.4, amendments to blanket contract with London Machinery for the supply and delivery of Mack cab over truck chassis, tandem axle and refuge loading packer body. Councillor Perks, you held the item. Questions for staff?
Yes, thank you. Again, to confirm my understanding, so what seems to have happened here is because the province was introducing its new blue box, we decided not to purchase some trucks or put off the purchase of them. Now we're catching up and we need an extra $5.5 million to catch up. And also the prices increased for all the reasons given.
Through the chair, that's the gist of it, yes.
Okay. So this is $5.5 million that the city has to come up with because the province changed the system and we were in a period of uncertainty.
I think it's fair to say that, through you, Mr. Chair, I think it's fair to say that there's more clarity from the province now and the city's specific responsibility as far as EPR is concerned. When you look at the number of units that we're talking about here driving the amendment, it's a total of 9, 4 of which are impacted by EPR, 5 of which are impacted by, again, our planning process, and the extended lead times, and that's impacting our ability, like, we need to account for that in our planning process. So the net of the amendment is basically 9 additional units, 4 of which are driven by EPR.
Okay. I'm just wondering if that isn't a cost for the 4 that we should try to recover from the province or in the agreement with the stewardship organization, because this is a cost that was imposed on us due to provincial uncertainties. Have we considered a mechanism for that?
I can't speak for Mr. Kelleher, but I'll certainly take that question away to have that discussion with him in terms of what the arrangement with the city is in terms of our responsibilities for the coming several years, during which time we're going to continue to collect recyclables.
Yep, okay. And if you guys could loop me in on those discussions? All right. Those
I'll
are my
speak
questions.
to Mr. Kelleher.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Any other questions for staff on the item? Speakers? Speakers, Councillor Perks, would you like to move it?
Yeah, so moved.
Item 2.4, moved by Councillor Perks. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. (2.8) Amendment to purchase order issued to Yardi Canada to develop a housing provider web-based portal. I guess I held the item. I have a few questions for staff. How is this transitioning Housing Connections over to a web-based solution for our wait list?
To you, Chair, Doug Rollins from the Housing Secretariat. We have already implemented a platform for the choice-based My Access Housing TO waitlist management system at Access to Housing. This purchase amendment furthers an Auditor General recommendation in which we were looked to encourage to expand that system for applications and extend it into the housing provider domain, so we have better access and information to rent geared to income calculations done by our housing provider partners.
So can individual applicants on the wait list log into this and see where they are, see their file, their housing selections that they've put there, and
that functionality exists already at My Housing Access TO and is available with our partners and currently available to applicants. This housing provider portal, again, moves forward on the audited recommendations. It's more for our housing provider partners. So when they do rent geared to income calculations on an annual basis for those applicants who are housed as tenants, we will have better access to data and information to improve our quality assistance and oversight, as well as provide us with rich data on who's in our housing to help us develop policies and programs to improve housing for all.
does this help update or clean out our list?
Again, this purchase order amendment is about housed tenants. The applications are managed through our existing system, My Housing Access TO, and I can say our work with Yardi to date on that process has very much streamlined and improved our data source. Our prior technology was over 20 years old and at end of life, and this has substantially increased our ability to get data on a quick basis, to manage outcomes better, and we've seen performance improvements both in the number of offers required to get an applicant housed, as well as the vacancy rates of our housing provider partners.
And the long-term maintenance of the system, is the onus on us or the third party, or?
The onus is on the third party through contract and licensing.
Okay. Councillor Bravo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is around the involvement or the consultation of the housing providers and the community that serves people who need housing. Has there been checking in about how this is working for them? I raise this because we've heard that there have been some challenges for organizations that are serving people who are attempting to find housing. Just wanted to know what where they are in terms of providing their feedback about how this is working.
So we have regular feedback loops with our housing providers. Again, this PO amendment is about a new module, an enhancement that'll be used by housing providers for the purpose of annual reviews of rent geared to income. So we're talking about tenants. But on our applicant side, we do recognize that the new system, whenever you implement a new system, can be challenging for both applicants and providers. We have done our utmost to continue to modernize, improve, and problem solve when issues or options arise. We've seen a success in the number of people who've applied. We've created workarounds for people who need to rely on a worker to help them with their applications. And we continue to rely on our third-party community partners, including housing help centers and shelters, for feedback on how we can improve the access and ensure people can maintain their eligibility and access housing as quickly as possible.
So you're consulting with on the applicant side to make sure that the experience is improved? That's what it's.
Yeah, we work very closely with our IT partners and the customer experience unit to make sure that we tested, retested, and validated the improvements in the technology to support people. But that, Councillor, is ongoing work. It doesn't stop, and we will continue to try to work towards solving the issues for the people who are experiencing barriers with the system.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Councillor Perks.
Thank you. I want to zero in on the third recommendation here, which is developing a training plan to enhance providers' abilities to more effectively identify and act on potential ineligibility and fraud indicators. My experience in working with constituents who are on rent geared to income is the level of policing, inspection, paperwork, and so on to prove that you're actually an eligible tenant, and the complexity of it is often puts people's tenure at risk, even though they're legitimate. Is this just adding an additional policeman?
No, I think this is actually improving and taking some onus off the providers and allowing us to manage this in a more holistic fashion. Subsequent to the audit report that was in 2019, the province did streamline and simplify the process for rent geared to income calculations. So the information that I think you're referring to were bank statements and payment memos. At this point moving forward, housing provider or households need to identify that they're eligible to reside in Canada and that they have a notice of assessment. And that notice of assessment is all we need to be able to calculate the rent geared to income calculation. What we noted from the Auditor General's report is that there was inconsistent application over oversight and monitoring of housing provider files, and the city was relying exclusively on our 160 housing provider partners to do those calculations. This will allow us to have access to the calculations to validate that housing providers are doing their work and to do sample testing against that to make sure people don't own houses or instances that would make them ineligible for the benefit.
So I don't recall this particular auditor's report, but on a percentage basis, what percentage of the people on rent geared to income are engaging in fraud?
Very low.
Very low. So we're putting like all the other tenants through an extra process to catch a very few people.
No, I think what we're doing through this system, and at least the intent, Councillor, is to not require 100 or 160 housing providers to individually do this, to provide us the back-end information to do that at a systems level and identify where there are issues, to do it on a more thoughtful basis. And one of the other improvements that we made, Councillor, is that when there is a loss of eligibility and a household does appeal, the service manager, including myself, sit on a panel to oversee those RGI reviews so that we have a very clear indication of when people are losing their eligibility for failure to comply with the program requirements.
Okay, so can you give me an assurance then that the burden the burden on a legitimate tenant to prove eligibility is reduced by this enhancement?
This enhancement provides no additional requirements on tenant households.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Any other questions for staff? I don't see any. Speakers?
I can move it.
No speakers? Items moved by Councillor Perks. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 2.9, amendments to various purchase orders for rehabilitation upgrades at Ashbridges Bay and Humber treatment plants, held by Councillor Perks. Questions for staff?
So with this one, if I'm understanding, we're relying on the IBI group to tell us whether or not we're in compliance with provincial discharge requirements at Ashbridges and Humber Bay?
No, or not. IBI Group is providing construction and post-construction services.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I know, there is a technical issue.
Maybe if he can turn his camera off, we get better.
Lou, would you mind just turning your camera off for a minute? We're just having some connectivity problems. Thanks very much. Could you
Yes,
just...
the audio has been cutting in and out of the whole committee for WebEx.
Oh, has it? Oh, gosh.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Anyway, you're sounding good. So could you just re-answer Councillor Perks' question?
Sure.
Thank you.
So the services that we're relying on from IBI Group is specifically to provide us design services, construction administration services, and post-construction services for a couple of different projects. That is the scope of their work for us.
Thank you.
I wonder whether we should play Muzak in between pauses. Yeah. Councillor Perks, you're done?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Speakers? Councillor Perks?
I'm going to support this one reluctantly. I think that the tendency I see emerging is to have a contractor do the design, do the construction, and do the evaluation of the construction. And I just think that the oversight of public expenditure when you integrate those functions under a single contractor is just not good practice. It would seem to me that we should be bringing some of that back in-house, or else splitting the contract across different firms. You know, you're saying, here are the keys to the hen house. Please come in, Mr. Fox, and tell us that everything's okay. And it's just, so I'm very reluctant, and I hope that in future we stop seeing this integration of all these different functions within a single contract.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Anyone else to speak on the item? Okay. Can I have a reluctant mover? I'm not going to move it. I don't want to be on record. Can I have a non-reluctant mover? Usually the vice chair takes care of these testy issues. You're very brave, Councillor Holyday. Moved by Councillor Holyday. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 2.10. Amendment purchase order with WSP Canada Incorporated for detailed design of the John Street corridor improvements. You know what? Why don't we add Councillor Fletcher's item now? I assume we've had enough time to review it. This first vote is just to add it to the agenda, and then when we come to it, it'll be open for debate. So all those in favor of adding Councillor Fletcher's letter to the agenda? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Back to 2.10, held by Councillor Perks.
So on this one, we're contracting with WSP Canada, and they're responsible for doing the survey, the underground mapping, locates, design, and a construction phasing plan, which we will then be in a position to tender that plan. Is that what's happening here?
Through you, the chair.
What we're doing here is that this is a plan to, this was focused on something that was completed back in 2016. It's a refresh of a design, and the additional work is topographic survey, some of the regulatory requirements that we need to adhere to with regards to excess soils, and additional work pertaining to an additional segment of sewer design, as well as the construction phasing plan for John Street corridor. Once that's all done, there will be a separate tender going out for construction.
Okay, so I've had, and I believe many members of council have had recent experiences of construction delays because of inaccuracies in the topographical mapping and the locates and the underground infrastructure. And I'm wondering, what safeguards are we building in on this contract and other ones so that when there's an error in their locates or their underground mapping, they're liable for liquidated damages and construction delays?
Yeah, so through you, the chair, we do have provisions in the contract for liquidated damages when it comes to errors. I don't know if staff wants to add to that.
Yes, through you, Chair. There are provisions made in all of our tenders. And one of the pieces that we are carrying out right now is refreshing this design. And there has been work done by other utility companies, particularly Toronto Hydro. And that's one of the reasons that we would like to refreshen this design before it goes to the tender. So all of that information, whether it's underground utilities and or above ground utilities, will be recaptured and put on our design drawings before it's put forward for tender. So we're trying to eliminate as many conflicts as possible before we go to tender.
So I just had an experience where a construction project in my ward was extended 3 different times and wound up taking 50% longer than the original construction schedule because there were errors in mapping, not 1, not 2, but 3 locations underground infrastructure. Right. And I have been unable to be satisfied as to whether or not the firm that we contracted to do the locates and topographical mapping is going to be held accountable. I'm wondering, can you tell me now that the accountability mechanisms in this contract are robust enough so that we will have recourse if that happens here?
That's our intention, Councillor, yes. Yeah. So we are trying to eliminate as many conflicts as possible. But unfortunately, at times, the work done in downtown corridor and some of the older areas, there are changes made that are not on our as-built drawings. So it's very, very difficult to eliminate every single conflict that might exist out there. There are a lot of unforeseen conditions, and they do contribute to, unfortunately, delays. But that's the process that we are going through at this point. So any of the known conflicts or any of the conflicts that we will encounter through this survey and or underground subsurface utility investigation, they will be reflected on our drawings.
Through you, the chair, just want to add that we do have provisions on omissions and errors as well in our contracts with the consultants. So we do the best we can to make all the necessary steps, make sure that they're in place.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Perks, Councillor Bravo.
Thank you, Chair. For someone who's just learning here, I'm interested to find out what the line is between unforeseen conditions and work not properly done. I understand you're saying you have provisions for omissions and errors. Like, how do you make the determination that something is actually improperly done versus just a result of unforeseen conditions?
Yeah, through you, the chair, what we do is that the best we can, we do the pre-engineering piece so that there is the investigation up front, so that we try to itemize and identify what some of the conflicts may be. And when circumstances come up and it becomes, when we have to deem it as being unforeseen, there needs to be an investigation, there needs to be a claim process so that we can determine which way it sits.
And so it's incumbent on staff to make that determination, or is there a process? Like, what, I'm just wanting to get more clarity on how you make the determination and how the investigation takes place.
Yeah, through you, the chair, what we do is that we do assess that with our consultant assignment expertise, and we do go through a claims process, and if necessary, we bring in our legal team as well. Is there anything else to add?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Any other questions for staff? I do not see any speakers on the item.
Yep, this is another one I'm going to be following up on. Every major construction project that has taken place in my ward has had some kind of an error in terms of the underground infrastructure. And, you know, the current one at Queensway, Roncesvalles, as I said, it was 3, and a project that was supposed to take 16 months is now going to take 24. And so with a 50, you know, so that's a 50% increase in time, and it's all due, every bit of it is due to underground infrastructure not being where the consultants told us it was. That may be their error. It may be the incorrect documentation on the part of private utilities. And I think in that instance, we should be going after those private utilities for not filing correct documents with us. So I'm not sure if it's going to be here or a different committee. I think we as a city have to start policing this better so that we can have construction projects that have reliable timetables, and so that the consulting engineering industry and the private utilities understand that they have to give us good information or we're coming after them. So I'll be writing some committee a letter about this. Would it be this one or infrastructure? I don't even know.
It depends. If it's underground engineering, yeah, usually when it hits the procurement and reopening a procurement, it's here. So your request
General policy, it would probably be infrastructure.
Infrastructure environment would be my guess.
I'll be writing to them. I can probably find some other councillors to sign that letter. Okay, thanks.
No, I look forward to seeing the letter. I'm sure it'll be a terse letter. Okay.
That's me, terse, not verbose.
Okay, any other questions of staff on the item? Speakers? Any other speakers? Sorry.
I'll speak. In a better world, we would contract the design back in, bring it in-house, train staff, and get it done right. I just had to put that on the record. There was a time.
That was it? Oh, thank you. Okay. Any other speakers, or we're good? Okay. Vice Chair Holliday, do you want to move the item? Move staff agreement? Okay. I will move the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item 211, award of Ariba document and CH2M Hill Canada Limited, Stantec Consulting, professional engineering services for Phase 5 of the Basement Flooding Protection Program. Councillor Perks, you held the item.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Does anyone else have any questions of staff? Are there any speakers on the item?
Yeah, I'll speak.
Councillor Perks?
So I'm going to vote no on this. This is another one of the ones where we are contracting a single firm to do the project management, the design, the construction administration, and post-construction services. And that kind of integrated contract just creates too many opportunities for padding and too little oversight. If we are contracting out to a single vendor to do all those different stages and to have all of that responsibility, there are just too many ways that the contractor can increase the cost of the city and pass, you know, and obscure how the different parts relate to each other. It is bad practice. Other municipalities don't do it this way, They break up the responsibilities, and in fact, they manage more of it in-house. I'm not going to be supporting these blanket vertically integrated contracts anymore. It's just bad practice.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Anyone else to speak on the item? I guess I have to. Well, you haven't moved a motion. He hasn't moved a motion. He's just declaring that he's going to vote against it. I feel obligated to just speak for a minute in defense of the staff recommendations. I can tell you the work that's been done in the basement flooding protection program in York Center has been nothing short of remarkable. When I came to City Hall 12 years ago, one of the biggest, perhaps the biggest problem we were having was basement flooding, particularly in the Bathurst Manor area, and of course, although I didn't represent the area at the time, parts of Downsview. And the time it's expensive to get these programs done, but the benefit aligns with our climate change policy because it's pure resiliency. It protects homeowners and the investment they have made in their personal home. It protects businesses that have been severely damaged through extreme weather events over the years and their ability to operate. And while it's expensive, and while we're going with the known quantities of suppliers, it's a dividend that the city cannot afford to risk. And I therefore support and trust staff recommendations. I'm somewhat familiar with these companies because they did the work in the area that I represent, protecting homeowners and businesses, and I would support this recommendation. Any other speakers on the item? No. Councillor Holyday, you said you want to move staff recommendations? Okay. All those in favor?
Recorded, please.
Okay. Councillor Perk has asked for a recorded vote. All those in favor? Councillor Holyday? Councillor Pasternak? Opposed? Councillor Perks? Councillor Matlow? Well, okay, I hope I hope you'll be able to explain the residents of this area and why their project is on hold. You can't abstain, but you can.
I have to leave, like certain people have left. And is it too late to ask what the implications of not?
We can vary the procedures, but
Can I suggest, as an alternative to defeating it, that we defer it for one cycle?
I wouldn't support deferral, but do you want to move it to, it's really not scheduled to go to council. You could move a motion, send it to council without recommendation.
There we go, I'll do that.
Yeah, I think there's a policy gap that's being identified here around the bundling of all of the pieces of the contracts. And so these are the kind of questions that I think we don't have enough information about, particularly in relation to best practices in other municipalities that have dealt with these things. So I feel comfortable with that.
Okay, so the compromise here is I'll move a motion to send it to council without recommendation. Do I do a recorded vote on that? I think that's better than it losing here. Understood. Fully understood, Councillor Holyday.
Okay, so you want another recorded vote?
Yeah, so we have to do another recorded vote. We'll send it up to council without recommendation. All those in favor? Councillor Perks, Councillor Bravo, Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Matlow. Opposed? Councillor Holyday. Okay. Yes, Councillor Holyday,
I
point
want
of
to
order.
confirm the minutes showed that I did move it. I did move the staff recommendations. I think that's included in the minutes.
Yeah, we sort of canceled the
Okay.
vote
It's on tape, so I'm,
the first time around. Yes, you could play, you can play that video.
fair enough. Thank you
On
very much.
TikTok or whatever other platform you want, if it's not banned. Okay, item 213, award to multiple suppliers for collection services, Provincial Offences Act fines for court services. Councillor Holliday, you held the item down.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a question of staff.
Question for staff?
The Auditor General prepared a very comprehensive report in 2018 and provided quite a number of recommendations regarding contracted collection services for POA fines. And I just wondered if staff could comment, because it's not really in the report, but if staff could comment on the alignment of the new contract with the recommendations of the Auditor General.
Through the chair to the councillor, thank you very much for the question. I can confirm that the contracts recommended today include in the terms and conditions all of the recommendations from the Auditor General, and that those recommendations have been implemented by court services in the previous contract as well.
I wondered if we could elaborate just a bit deeper. I'm just pulling up those recommendations. But there were various ones, and they were about the processes that were used to allocate the work to the collection agencies.
Yes, through the chair to the councillor. So there are 4 recommendations that are included in the contracts under the terms and conditions. One involves the rotation of assignments that are regularly and consistently rotated between agencies within a tier, and they are rotated at a 6-month period initially and then monthly thereafter. Assignments also rotate based on the age of the debt. We also apply and review the performance of each agency within their tiers, and we do this quarterly, providing incentives to top performers, and it gives us the ability to cancel or terminate contracts of consistently low performers or non-performance agencies. We communicate industry standard and industry trend benchmarks that the collection agencies have to achieve, and they also are required to share information with the city on their collections. Another recommendations was regarding dunning, where there was a recommendation around the consistent contact with debtors and implementation of consistent dunning process in contracts. That's included in the contract, as well as some additional dunning processes such as pre-enforcement letters that have been very successful in the results of collections. And then there was a recommendation on defining benchmarks and outcomes being tracked and evaluated against the established benchmarks, and those were implemented and in place. Now, our benchmarks prior to the pandemic were at 50% overall, and we exceeded that. We had some negative impacts due to the pandemic and orders from the Interior Court of Justice, and we expect that we'll achieve that benchmark overall throughout our entire collection strategies over the next 2 years.
Thank you for answering my questions and for your work on this. Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move the item.
Okay, any other questions for staff? I just have a couple of quick ones. When it comes to collections, quality control is very important, and these firms are representing the City of Toronto. What kind of measures do we have in place to make sure that they do their job but don't harass or intimidate the citizens of Toronto?
As part of our contract management with the collection agencies, we make sure that they adhere to all the legal requirements for collection agencies within the province of Ontario, and we require them to track every collection action taken by the agency to collect the debt, including requesting recordings of telephone conversations, the frequency of such, and we're able to respond to complaints from the public because that information sharing requirement is in the contract, and they abide by it.
So when we were outsourcing smart meters, the firm that we used was sending out letters threatening reluctant participants with a $50,000 fine. They had no authorization from the city to do so, and there was no legal basis for mentioning a fine like that. How do we prevent that from happening again?
Thank you for the question. I'm not familiar with that particular case, but we have advertised on our website which collection agencies are under contract with the city, where the public can search easily, and we make that information available through our customer service channels. So if any person or company is contracted by or contacted by a collection agency, they can contact us to verify the veracity of it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions for staff? Speakers on the item? Yes. Councillor Holyday?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to move staff recommendations and offer my compliments to staff for implementing contracts which are congruent with the findings of the Auditor General. They go back to, and I really want to speak about the findings of the Auditor General, they go back to 2018, and members of council and even those that are new to council may recall this in the media. There was quite a bit of discussion, public discussion on this, about millions and millions and millions of dollars in uncollected fines. And, you know, there was, I guess, urban legends out there of people that just didn't pay their tickets. And this really is a public confidence issue, that if people feel that the fines don't matter, then, you know, how can we expect people to comply with the rules and the laws? And so, you know, the collection of these fines is important. I mean, I think most people pay their fines, but sometimes people do not, and it requires an escalating set of steps, and this is one of them. But the Auditor General did find ways that it could be done better, and I'm glad that those ways are being integrated into the contracts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Any other speakers on the item? Councillor Holyday has moved the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The next item, I believe, also held by Councillor Holyday, but there was a request to go in camera, so that's 2.14. Do you still want to go into camera on that? Because we'll hold it down if you do.
I recall Councillor Perks may have questions that are public, and I'm just formulating mine, so if we'd like to go ahead.
All right, so we have a second item. We have a second item that is in camera as well.
The second item, in conversation with staff, may not need to go into camera, and we might be able to release it, but I do acknowledge there may be in-camera questions from my colleagues on this item.
Okay, so what we can do is, if it's the will of committee, we can start the item now. We can do our in-public component of it, and then we can go in camera, if need be. You know, maybe your questions will be satisfied in public. It's fine. Okay. Okay. So is it the will of the committee to deal with this, the public component of this item right now, or hold the item down and we'll do it towards the end?
I move we put it to the end. Yeah.
Okay, so item 14 is held down. We'll move to item 15, a non-competitive bridge contract for supply and delivery of groceries for long-term care homes. Councillor Perks, you held the item.
Thank you. This is what you get for reading the agenda too carefully. Is the genesis of this that we have a longer-term plan to get more sustainably produced food and healthier food but that work hasn't been completed, so we need to bridge the existing contract. Is that the case here?
The chair to the councillor. No, that's not the case. The reason that this has come forward is that the cost of the bridging contract is beyond my signing authority.
I'm sure I read. Bear with me, bear with me. There's a paragraph in here that starts at the bottom of page 1, continues on to page 2, that there are consultations with the Environment and Climate Division to address the city's requirement from vendors for data reporting to support the city's Cool Food Pledge commitment, which, along with the Transform TO Net Zero strategy, this was time intensive and we haven't completed it yet. What's the relationship? Like,
Through the chair, Councillor Perks. So part of the rationale for this bridging contract is we are going to market with a more complex strategy than we did last time, which required additional time, including the investigation and consultation with the Environment and Climate Division, again, for the types of foods that were going to be selected. So that is the rationale behind this bridging contract. We are in market right now, actually, for the next phase of that RFP.
okay, so does anyone know when we're going to have the climate-friendly food purchasing piece done? Is there any?
So maybe if I may, through the chair, we're working across all the divisions on the Cool Food Pledge. We're going to be bringing forward a baseline later this year as part of this contract, and is really how we manage or how we measure and work with the contractors to measure the information about the greenhouse gas emissions associated with food procurement. So it will, the work I believe the teams are doing is to ensure that that contract enables us to have that information that we can compare against our commitment to 25% reduction in our food emissions by 2030 based on the baseline which we're currently working on. So we'll have a report later this year that kind of outlines all the steps, but this ensures that we're set up to be able to both measure and then take future actions to get to our 2030 goal.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Holliday.
Just to confirm so I understand, we serve a lot of meals, the city, and this contract speaks to it. Am I correct, the meals are being served in our long-term care homes, in the shelters, and potentially in daycares? Are those basically the categories?
Through the chair to the councillor, yes. So those are the 3 divisions that are a part of this RFP.
Okay, and so, you know, we prepare meals, we make them, this is supplying the ingredients to make those meals. Can someone tell me a little bit about what the Cool Food Pledge aims to do? Just a caption.
So through the chair, the Cool Food Pledge is essentially, it's through the World Resources Institute. The idea is to reduce the emissions associated with our procurement of food for our services by 25% by 2030. And the idea being looking at how we procure those foods, how they travel here. So is it local food versus shipping from, other countries around the world? The type of food that we serve, is it, more plant-based in nature versus maybe a higher greenhouse gas emitting product? So looking at all that and being able to measure that and then identify what actions could be taken to reduce those emissions embedded within the food. So at this stage, it's really around understanding what our emissions are from food and then what the emissions are, and how we could reduce those through various actions. So there's no specific.
Is meat high emissions?
There, a lot of factors go into what the emissions would be, but generally something like beef would be higher than plant because of the
Right,
emissions that go into
ruminants.
production.
Is it beef and lamb, I think, compared to chicken? So the Cool Food Pledge likely would mean that the diets would change.
So I think it would enable us to understand what the emissions are and then decide if we need to change those diets, recognizing, and I'm not going to talk about the diet side, that maybe different individuals will have different dietary requirements, but it'll enable us to understand that and then take actions where appropriate to reduce those emissions.
Is it a fair distillation of where this is headed, that we would likely be serving less meat and more vegetables, and more specifically, less red meats?
I wouldn't want to presume an outcome of what the
If you read the
information will
literature.
tell us, but we do know that, you know, red meats will have higher greenhouse gas emissions, so reducing those, you know, would have a relation.
So if somebody in a long-term care home or a shelter wants a piece of meat, what do? Do we not feed it to them? I mean,
So through the chair, Councillor, we have guidelines in long-term care and around, you know, providing menus for our residents, and I would say the same for the other divisions that you've noted. We follow a food guide and would provide meals or meats to meet the nutritional needs of our residents.
but proteins are on the food guide as opposed to the type of meat, right?
Yes.
Okay. And the last question I'll have is, will the Cool Food Pledge cost us more or less? Cool. No, I said cool. No play on words. The Cool Food Pledge, will it cost us more or less?
Sorry, through the chair, I think, Councillor, that is to be determined.
Okay. Do we know what other cities or jurisdictions might have found, whether they implemented the Cool Food Pledge or something similar? Did it go up or down?
Through the chair, the councillor, I don't have that information. Something that
Fair
we
enough.
definitely look into.
Fair enough. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That was all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Holliday. I just have a couple of questions. This contract is for groceries, not prepared foods. We order groceries, and then our various locations make the meals.
That is correct.
All right. So at the end of the day, it's our teams that decide what gets served to our residents.
Correct. So we have nutrition managers in all of our homes and dietitians who create the menu planning to meet the residents' needs. And yes, that would then drive what ingredients they need to order through our grocery contract.
Now, Gordon Food Services is our current supplier, and we're here today discussing this because their contract expires March 31st, and we need a bridge contract.
Correct. That's correct.
So I assume we're doing this because we're satisfied with this vendor's performance?
Yes.
And do you feel the city's getting value while at the same time making sure our residents get, you know, proper balanced meals?
I would say yes to that question as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Any speakers on the item? No? Okay, I'll move the recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 216, non-competitive contract with Midome Construction Services Limited for the new streetcar tracks on Adelaide Street. Councillor Perks, you held the item down.
Oh boy, do I have questions on this one. So let's get the narrative established here. A few years ago, when the province decided they were building the Ontario line, Metrolinx took on responsibility for providing a diversion or doing the construction work to divert the Queen Streetcar, right?
Through the speaker, I'll start. That's correct. The closure of Queen Street has been determined to be best served by a streetcar diversion.
And then recently, Metrolinx came to us and said, oh, the piece on Adelaide is too hard. We can't do it. So you should just run shuttle buses instead. Is that what happened next?
Through the speaker, so perhaps that's the outcome. I think understanding that the Ontario line work in downtown is significant work. Metrolinx asked us to take on the construction of the Adelaide work, including the underground work, so that they could focus their efforts on the Ontario line, Queen Street station.
So they originally said they would do it, and then just recently said, we can't. It's just too hard.
That is correct.
Okay. So what this report does is the City of Toronto stepping forward saying Metrolinx's solution, proposed solution of running shuttle buses is unacceptable, and we are issuing an amendment to an existing contract for sewer work so that we can build the necessary diversion piece.
So through the chair, the City of Toronto has is currently underway with a coordinated project on Adelaide Street to replace the water mains, upgrade some of the streetcar tracks, and do a complete street at the tail end of it. That's been ongoing. So the city, Metrolinx, and TTC have been talking about the most effective way to do this work. You're correct that Metrolinx initially was going to do the work on Adelaide Street and has now asked the city to do that work. In working with TTC, we've been also trying to come up with sort of the best value, least impactful strategy for getting the streetcar to continue through and have a diversion, as opposed to bus bridging, which is expensive and has a significant impact on the overall network. And so we have been in conversation to try to streamline this project as much as possible, because as you know, it's right in the downtown on corridors that are parallel to each other. And so what we did not, given that we have an ongoing contract, we did not want to have extended timelines by which we would have one contractor be there and then finish up their work, and then we wouldn't be able to start the next body of work until after that was done. So we've been trying as a staff team with Metrolinx and TTC to be able to streamline this, make it more effective, and cut down the timelines by which we would have the city in those two corridors under construction at the same time.
And the operational plan we've got, while we're doing the work on Adelaide, that won't be available, so we're going to divert the Queen car up to Dundas at McCall so that we can keep the streetcar service in place.
That is correct. TTC is going to use that corridor for temporarily until we can get the Adelaide diversion route in place.
So with those two pieces, the temporary diversion up and then us rescuing the Adelaide work, we're avoiding years of bus service on Queen that we would have got if we had allowed Metrolinx just to halt the Adelaide work.
That is correct.
Thank you. I will speak to this.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Fletcher, you are a visiting councillor. We get lonely here at this committee. Did you? I saw your hand go up
You
very
feel lonely
quickly.
at this committee?
We're very lonely. It's lonely at the bottom.
Put my signs here somewhere. I just wanted to really understand, if I could ask a question.
Yeah, no, sure, please.
Given that I have a fair amount to do with Metrolinx in my ward, just for the service planning or the construction planning by Metrolinx, did they just automatically assume that would go to bus use, or how did they do that planning in the downtown core? And who, would Mr. Toigo know better?
Yes.
What plans were put in? When did you find out that, whoa, this is going to add to increase the already increasing issues with the amount of construction that we have downtown. So if you walk me through that, yeah, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, it's Derek Twigo from Transit Expansion. My apologies for not being there in person today. Through you to the councillor, there has been a lot of work that was done by Metrolinx when the initial request was put forward to close down Queen Street for the 4.5 years that it's going to be closed down. As Barbara indicated previously, the option was to divert the streetcar services to Adelaide Street so that it would bypass the area of the closure. That work was done. The actual planning for that work was done in consultation with the city and the TTC so that we understood kind of what the implication would be. And in fact, the design on the Adelaide Street portion of the work was done by Metrolinx's design team and validated through our own ECS forces to make sure that it was done appropriately. So there's been a lot of work to determine how to do this. The biggest issue, and I think Barbara has mentioned, was that Metrolinx, in doing the design and trying to determine how to actually deliver this work, it would have resulted in approximately 616 days of bus diversion that would have needed to occur in order for them to complete the work. And as was indicated previously, the proposed solution now drastically reduces the amount of overlap between the time that the Queen Street is closed and the streetcar is diverted.
Can you just tell me?
I'm not sure if that answers your
question.
question.
I just want to know exactly from on Queen Street and what intersection to Queen Street and the next intersection that work is taking place.
So the area of you're talking about the Adelaide Street closure is from
no, the
Victoria
Queen Street. Queen Street.
Okay. For Queen Street, the closure is between Victoria to Yonge, and then from effectively Yonge Street to just east of Bay Street.
So that's what, a kilometer? 500 meters?
Less than a kilometer, Councillor.
Less than a kilometer.
Say it's less than a kilometer.
Okay. And I'm just curious because whoever came up with the streetcar diversion to Dundas is one block from Queen Street, and Adelaide is quite a few blocks. They're longer blocks to get down to Adelaide. So was that ever taken into account to just simply use Dundas Street for the duration?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, perhaps maybe the TTC would be better off in responding to kind of their service planning.
Sure. This is Lawrence Libby here, service planning at TTC. So through the chair,
I didn't hear that. I'm sorry. Who do we have with us?
Sorry, this is Lawrence Libby, the acting head of service planning at TTC.
Yes, please.
So through the chair, we worked with the city and with Metrolinx to look at many different options for diverting service around the Queen and Yonge closure. We did look at Dundas as a long-term diversionary route. However, with the fact that the tracks between the McCall and Broadview would necessitate a very long diversion in terms of accessibility to the transit routes. We opted for the Adelaide Street diversion because it would not interrupt service on Dundas, which is also another busy streetcar route, as well as we looked at King Street. But with the volume of streetcars on King Street, adding more streetcars on King would potentially delay service there. So we are looking at the Adelaide Street option as a means to provide a dedicated independent route diversion route for the 501 Queen streetcars. And then once we have the Adelaide tracks in place, the section of Queen that will not have service is short enough that we do not believe that we need bus bridging service.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Any other questions for staff on this item? Yes, Councillor Holyday.
Thank you, Chair. I think my question is to the TTC, but Mr. Toigo, you might want to weigh in as well. So the proposal here is to quite literally make a diversion loop out of out of streetcar tracks, down and around where the construction is going to be. The alternate and also the interim solution is going to mean the streetcars from the west are going to stop at the edge of the construction and transfer people to a bus. And then they will take the bus and they will transfer to the east side of the construction and be on their way, and vice versa, until these tracks are done. And that's I guess, the shuttle bus solution, and that was the default or the baseline. And for lots of reasons, there were concerns over that. Has anyone looked at a wider array of options? For instance, could the streetcar service on Queen be replaced with buses for the term? And what I mean by that is, have we gone through the math to validate those different options? This report before us just gives us the choice to approve or deny a single source contract, but I'm very curious on the business case and the analysis that went through this, went through to bring us to this point.
Through the chair, I'll answer this as well. So we did look at a number of options, and we have, in recent years, we have done a full bus replacement of Queen, and that was back in 2017. That was a bus replacement on the full route that required approximately 90 buses to make that bus replacement, which would take buses away from needs across the rest of the city. The bus bridge that we are requiring in the interim period right now is approximately 20 buses, which is a lot less of a demand on our network. So simply from an operating cost perspective, a 90 bus replacement would be too significant, as well as we would be parking a significant number of streetcars that provide much more capacity at a lower operating cost to the TTC. So this is why we are continuing to opt for the diversion via Adelaide to make sure that we can maintain streetcar service. And once that happens, people do not have to transfer between streetcars and buses. It's also too important to note that the Adelaide Street tracks are to provide much needed resilience to our streetcar network in the event of any disruptions on King Street. Without having Queen Street available and without Adelaide, King Street cars could potentially not be operable in the situation of an emergency and cannot divert around an instance, for example, at King and Bay if there was an incident there. And as recently we had the interruption at King and University, that really showed the need for us to have diversionary routes for streetcars in the core.
I don't disagree, and I lament that those things aren't in the report. I wanted to circle back because I got to be sure. Can you remind me what the current utilization rate is of the streetcar? I think we had that recently at the TTC meeting. There was an overarching rate around 55%.
Through the chair, network-wide across the streetcar network, we're at about 55% ridership. However, we are seeing during, especially in off-peak periods, that ridership is a lot higher than the 55%. It is very time dependent, and we do expect that to continue to grow as activity recovers in the downtown core.
Got it. And I appreciate that having to transfer from a streetcar to a bus and back to a streetcar delays people, but it would be a little different if it was just a bus. Is that correct? Straight through with a bus.
Through the chair, once the Adelaide track construction is complete, there will be no need for customers to transfer between bus and streetcar to complete their trip through the core.
So just based on did you account for the current utilization rate of the streetcar? Because you mentioned that you used the 2017 figure of 90 buses. And if you've done that, I'm satisfied. If you can just walk me through that you've taken into account what the 2023 requirement is over the next 4 years for buses, and that indeed all of that math still points to the $40 million investment. I just want to get that comfort, because we just don't have the business case here.
Through the chair, there is a reduction in the maximum demand during the busiest hour, which defines the number of buses that we need to operate. But that is still, a fairly significant number. I can pull that up and get that back to you. But it would still be a very large number of buses when we have a number of pressures across the system for us to deploy our buses to support other construction projects and ridership across the city.
So it's with all of these figures in consideration, including the fact that it's $40 million, is it still the recommendation of TTC to go this direction?
Through the chair, it is our recommendation because, as I mentioned, the resiliency piece as well. If we do not have diversion for King streetcars, for example, and we do not have the buses to replace both King and Queen fully with buses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Councillor Bravo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you talk about resiliency in this plan, are you talking about preventing further disruptions and delays and making sure that people are able to move through the city more effectively? Because even despite unforeseen circumstances?
Through the chair, that is correct. As we know, there are other events and construction and things that happen in the downtown core. So, for example, having the Adelaide tracks available would support our ability to divert King streetcar service around TIFF, for example, if there's events on King Street West. Not having these tracks in place really limits our ability to operate our streetcar service in the downtown core.
I'm a daily transit user, and I use this line in addition to a bunch of others on a daily basis. Is it accurate to say that when people can rely on service with fewer interruptions and fewer transfers, it is a factor in attracting and increasing ridership?
Through the chair, that is correct. Making sure that we provide our customers a seamless journey, regardless of the disruptions in place, is very important. As a regular streetcar rider myself, I know how disruptive it is if you have to transfer between services. We try to limit that as much as possible, and this is why we want these tracks built, is so that the Queen streetcar riders can get into the downtown core without having to transfer to a bus once that is complete. We do understand this interim period will be disruptive, and we are working with our partners to communicate that clearly and to make that as seamless as possible.
And from my experience, a lot of the negative interactions and that sometimes escalate into conflict happen because of service interruptions, and a few minutes of delay, particularly in transferring, can make a huge difference to people arriving late to work, students who have taken a part-time job, assuming that they're going to be able to get there after class. How important is how are interruptions contributing to the insecurity on transit right now?
Through the chair, obviously, having any disruption in someone's journey is, having someone have to step off a streetcar and wait on the street potentially for a next stop is something that is a challenge for our customers. We are looking to improve our processes in terms of communication, in terms of how we schedule that service so that we can provide more seamless transfers between bus and streetcar where that has to happen. An example is we are increasing the overlap, for example, of where the bus and streetcar service is so that there are more points of transfer so that people can transfer they can check their apps to see when the next bus is coming, and they can exit the streetcar where they feel most comfortable to make that transfer. So we understand that, and that's from feedback we've received over the past couple of years, especially with a lot of the disruption on our streetcar network.
Thanks. So resiliency and fewer connections are going to make the experience better. It potentially increase ridership and also reduce conflict. So around the utilization rate, when you talk about 55%, is it the entire line?
Through the chair, that's correct. On a streetcar network-wide perspective, our ridership is approximately 55%, but we do expect to see that grow as the rest of the year continues. And of course, that is very dependent that we might get increased ridership if return to office policies change throughout the city.
But for any of us that ride this particular line, it's pretty packed in certain areas. So that's sort of an average. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay. And then finally, we would have to be pulling buses off of other routes to be able to do the bus solution, would we not? We'd have to be reducing bus service in other areas. And if we were to go with the bus versus this option?
Through the chair, the buses, we do have buses that are budgeted for construction across the city. However, if that is increased because of a change of plan, that would create pressures on the ability to deliver service elsewhere, and that may limit the ability for us to increase service.
So this is better for riders and more affordable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Any other questions for staff? I just have one quick question. So what happens when the closure is no longer required? What happens to this infrastructure, and does it stay? Does it go? Who pays? Who's responsible for removing this change?
To you, Mr. Chair, the streetcar tracks will be a permanent upgrade, and the bulk, the 99% of the cost is being covered by Metrolinx.
Okay, thanks very much. Speakers? Yes.
I have questions for staff. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, there you are. Councillor Matlow, questions for staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Mr. Toigo, to you, Mr. Chair, are there, regarding discussions with Metrolinx that's affecting residents' ability to navigate through the core, is there any information that you believe would be relevant to the decisions that council makes that you or other staff self-selected to not share through any reports, that we should be aware now and that we wouldn't have otherwise known unless I asked you this question now?
To you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure what you're asking me, Councillor.
Is there any information that you think would be potentially material to decisions that we're making that I just wouldn't know about unless I asked you to share it now, that perhaps you and your colleagues just decided on your own wouldn't be material, but might reasonably, councillors might want to know what that information is?
Councillor Matlow, this is going to...
Anything material to these decisions that I couldn't know unless I had asked you whether or not you withheld any information.
This sounds like a Robert McNamara book. Can we leave this to Councillor Matlow?
Well, the reason, Mr. Chair, that I'm asking this is that there was an episode several weeks ago when there was relevant information impacting the decision regarding Smart Track that Mr. Toigo and Ms. Cook and others just decided that some information that would have been relevant wasn't shared with council. And after the fact, it was suggested by staff that we should have asked questions to know the answers. But of course, if we didn't know to ask, we couldn't have received those answers. So I'm going to make a practice, Setley, to have to ask, is there any information that was just deliberately withheld or not shared?
Councillor Matlow, with all due respect, it's not a fair question. I think this line of questioning has to stop. If you want to, if you feel you're not given enough information here at committee, as I said, this goes to council, and I welcome you to continue a more fruitful line of questioning there.
With all due respect, not only is this fruitful, if that's your characterization of it, but this is exactly in response to comments made by staff about, they actually have suggested that we should be asking questions about things that we could not have known about otherwise, which is, I know it sounds like folly, it's absurd, but we're in this situation. So I'm just asking, is there any information that we should be aware of that was just not put in this this report that we couldn't know if we didn't ask now, and we might find out later? If the answer is no, that's wonderful.
Yeah, the answer is no for me. So staff, we trust staff to give all the details they're required to, and that we need to make important decisions. If you feel that the staff reports that they're giving us have gaps, that prompts questions for clarity on what's before us. I don't think you're going down that road.
In all candor, I don't have the same level of trust based on real experiences that have happened not too long ago.
All right. Well, look. Did you want to take that offline and discuss that with staff? That's not what we're doing here.
Well, I think this conversation needs to be a public discussion, and listen, to respect the committee's time, I will, I'll follow up on council, but I don't have the same amount of trust as you might have that decisions aren't, whether it be intentionally withheld or information intentionally withheld by staff at times.
All right.
Or at the direction of the
Councillor
mayor's
Matlow,
office.
we're going to go to speakers soon, and this is going to council. You will have every opportunity, but I do caution you, don't question the integrity of staff. If we have questions about a report or the direction they're going, that can be...
It's not regarding the integrity. It's not regarding the integrity. It's about there are times when staff have decided that information isn't material to council that I believe would have been material, and they've said that we should have asked about that, even if we didn't know to have asked about it in the first place. And that's what I'm trying to do today. But I'll do that at council.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Matlow. Any other questions for staff? I think we can move to speakers. Councillor Perks.
Thank you.
And Councillor Holiday.
I'm going to be enthusiastically endorsing, supporting, recommending, and voting for this report. This is, I think, a key moment in transit planning and construction in the City of Toronto. And the reason it's a key moment is it is demonstrating to us how utterly devastating the mistake was when we handed construction and transit planning up to the province of Ontario through their unelected, unaccountable, and untransparent Metrolinx organization. Here is the circumstance. We made an agreement with them that we would provide a streetcar, they would provide a streetcar diversion while the work on Queen Street was taking place. They looked at it, they discovered it was actually hard to build and construct streetcar tracks inside an urban area, and they panicked and said, let's run buses instead. But the TTC and the transportation staff in the City of Toronto, who actually do understand how to deliver transit in an urban area, said that was unacceptable. And not only did they come up with an alternative, they found an existing contract to do sewer work and how we could take that sewer work and piggyback building the diversion into that contract. It's the kind of deft, flexible, and responsive work that you want out of a transit planning and construction agency, the very thing that Metrolinx has proven it can't be. Sure, sitting down with a box of pencil crayons and drawing some lines on the City of Toronto and saying we'll put the transit here is easy and fun, or hiring a couple of mighty machines to knock down a heritage building and cut down some trees is easy to do. But actually providing transit in a dense urban core with a lot of infrastructure already in place is obviously beyond what Metrolinx is capable of doing. And I think it's time for we as a city and we as a council to revisit the terrible agreement Mayor Tory made with the province of Ontario to, allow them to just come and stomp on the city to get their version of transit done in exchange for a little bit of money. And I hope that we as a city and we as a council take that seriously. The lesson learned here is that Metrolinx can't do urban transit and that the City of Toronto and the TTC can.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. I'm exhausted from that short speech. Councillor Holyday.
Thank you, Chair. I think the one piece that I would like to add that Councillor Perks left out was that Metrolinx is paying $39,545,000 out of it. So I see that Metrolinx is actually funding the vast majority of this project. I think the little residual that the city's funding has to do with the road resurfacing. And the city is going to have durable benefits out of this, which were elaborated in the questions and answers. That there will be a permanent diversion route. And as we know from the report, the vast majority of the work here is not the tracks, it's the movement of the utilities and chambers that are on the street, which I would presume means that they'll be a little better and a little more resilient because they will be built to the latest standards. But I do want to acknowledge, and I had to ask a bunch of questions to TTC, which they admirably answered here in the meeting, and I did have to seek other information. And I don't want to point to this report specifically, but it is something that I've spoken about at this committee and its previous versions, that sometimes we get reports that ask us to approve a non-competitive agreement. And it's my desire in thinking through and in evaluating and doing my job on the committee is to understand a little bit more about the business case and the rationale that got us here. And it's not that I don't believe that it's taken place and people have not thought through it, because again, those questions were answered today by TTC. I just wish it was more on the paper in front of me, because it's not just about me, it's about the public. It's almost $40 million here, which is a big ask. And I'd like to be able to offer that opportunity for people to see all of the pieces and understand, why didn't we just do buses across Queen Street? Why couldn't that be done? And there is an answer. And it's not to say that there's nothing on this paper. There is information that's very helpful, but it's my preference that reports like this go a little further to tell the whole story and to tell the options that were considered. But thank you for the opportunity to ask those questions, Mr. Chair. I do feel a whole lot more comfortable about this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Any other speakers? Councillor Mallow? I do not see you. One more call and that's it. Councillor Matlow, did you want to speak on this item? Okay, we're going to put it to a vote. Oh, Councillor Bravo, you're speaking?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
So I am also enthusiastically supporting this, and I think that to pick up on what Councillor Perks was saying, the City of Toronto, its residents, the councillors, city staff are constantly in skirmishes of all kinds with Metrolinx. We have a massive expansion coming, and while, yes, Metrolinx may be covering some of the cost of this or a lot of it, the reality is that the provincial government has made the choice to invest in transit and transit in this particular way with an arm's length agency that has no municipal representation on it, therefore no knowledge, no local knowledge, and no understanding of both the accountability to the public and to residents impacted by these decisions, and further no accountability around the technical decisions, the choices that are being made, and using some private-public partnerships like on Eglinton, which inoculate in a lot of ways the public eyes into why costs escalate, but in fact we end up paying. The public pays and the people of Toronto pay. So I think it's important to constantly note how staff here, and particularly at the TTC and working with other departments, are able to find solutions and have successfully built a transit system which has been in the past and the envy of the world. And I want to congratulate the approach that both builds resiliency for the system into the future, does the utilities work, and in fact make sure that transit riders are respected through this process, because every time someone takes transit, they're taking a car off the road, and we need to treat those people with the most, as a higher order priority user of transportation in the city. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Councillor Matlow?
Yes. Sorry, I've had a little trouble here. So I want to obviously concur with both what Councillor Perks and Councillor Bravo just said. I'm going to support the recommendation, but it's over and over again we find ourselves in a situation with Metrolinx that we are reacting. I agree. This wasn't Councillor Perks' words, but I felt that when we made the agreement with Metrolinx, the city capitulated, and we handed over all of our leverage to be able to protect the quality of life and the well-being of our residents, the survival of small businesses along our main streets, and really, I wouldn't even consider the city a junior partner when it comes to transit expansion any longer. We really are just sort of being told rather than being worked with in most cases. We are flipping the bill for a lot of projects that we wouldn't have otherwise when the province, had agreements in past proposed projects to be able to cover the preponderance of those projects. But here we are. Eglinton over the last decade has been injurious to our communities. Businesses have folded, and everyone had this experience along Eglinton that we were all being treated like collateral damage during the construction. And there was never a plan put in place to make sure that even though, of course, construction is a nightmare and it's awful and there's nothing you can do to stop it from being difficult, there wasn't enough of a plan put in by either the city or Metrolinx to really mitigate the impacts on the businesses and the communities as well as it should have. But we have an opportunity with the Ontario line to do better. And I'm concerned that we're not going to do well enough because Metrolinx isn't really going to consult with us. They haven't proven that, for example, at Osgood with the community. They haven't proven that in Thorncliffe. They haven't proven that throughout the line yet. They bulldoze through, and everybody has to deal with that. But I know that this is uncomfortable for some of you, Mr. Chair. But I also do have concerns sometimes with the information that I receive from some city staff. I don't always trust it. And the reason for that is because it doesn't always make sense to me. Like information that we receive from the city when we were having
Councillor
a debate on
Mallow,
Scarborough.
just a word of caution. Just be careful of the road you're going down and speak to the item before us.
Well, but this is important. This is important because we are being advised by city staff, not by Metrolinx. And during the Scarborough debate, there were numbers like ridership projections that I never saw the evidence of how they grew to
I'm really
provide,
not sure how that debate relates to a streetcar diversion track and a non-competitive contract that we're debating.
Mr. Chair, because as we move forward, we're going to be getting more and more recommendations from staff to address the, how to work with the transit expansion. And I just want to make sure that as we go forward, that the information that we receive, both from the city, be accurate, factual, not be politicized or directed by the mayor's office for any purposes other than the facts. And then moreover, we're dealing with a very, a transit agency by the province.
Councillor Matlow, first of all, I guess you're aware we don't have a mayor. Secondly, we don't know who the next mayor will be. So let's reserve those comments, and we all know about the the role the mayor plays in municipalities across Ontario. So they do direct policy. So let's measure your comments accordingly.
I feel very measured. Like I'm speaking exactly what I believe, and I'm expressing myself, and that's the role of a member of council. And I was just about to say that the transit agency, Metrolinx, ostensibly is an arm's length transit agency in the province, but we also have evidence that it often is directly politicized, and what it does and the decisions it makes and the information that it decides to share or not is based on what the Minister of Transportation allows it to or tells it not to.
Okay, Councillor Mallow, you're well over five minutes. Can we, maybe you want to continue your remarks at council?
But why am I being interrupted by you? Like, I don't understand this.
Well, because you're going after city staff and challenging their
I'm not going after anyone.
I think we heard quite clearly that you were questioning the integrity of city staff and challenging the role of the mayor's office, politicizing staff reports. I mean, we all heard it, and I just don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's healthy for this.
But that actually does happen. It's not about going after anybody. It's like I'm expressing why when I read recommendations, there's skepticism that comes from experiences where there is politicization of transit expansion, whether it be from the city or from Metrolinx. In some cases, not all cases, but in some cases. And what I'm arguing is that as we move forward, I want to make sure that we have all the facts in front of us that are absolutely factual to make the decision. Okay. I'm going to digress because I've interrupted so much.
So yeah, no, Councillor Mallow, thank you for your comments. What we're here to discuss is whether we want to give a non-competitive contract to Midome Construction Services. That's what we're deciding today in committee. Okay. Does anyone else want to speak on this item? Okay. I'll move the staff recommendations for us, and then go to City Council. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 18, non-competitive contract with Traffic Logics Corporation for watch your speed signs for the Vision Zero Road Safety Plans School Safety Zone Program. Councillor Perks, you held the item down.
I did.
Questions for staff?
Yes. So this is a non-competitive tender to purchase lawn signs. Am I correct about that?
Through the chair, Councillor Perks, they're not lawn signs, they're watch your speed signs.
So this isn't the little frame.
No.
They're got mixed up.
Okay.
My bad. This is why we have questions, so I can find out that I'm wrong. Okay.
That's it. The digital things that's flashing. Okay.
But there's also the H-frame ones.
I understand that.
I just didn't know which it was because it didn't,
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can someone confirm, these are generic signs. These aren't specific to either the school zones installed on a permanent basis or on the rotating signs. Is that correct? Like they're all the same.
Through the chair, you're correct, Councillor. We have both the ones that move and then we have the permanent ones, but many of these are actually being implemented in school zones, not exclusively, but it's one of the reasons why we're moving forward here so we can keep up the pace of delivery.
No, got it. But some of them are also the movable ones as well.
I believe that's true, yes.
Okay. Can you tell me just a little bit about our access to the data from those signs? It talks about it in the report, but I am curious, Can we get a hold of that? Can we make it open data? Can councillors see it? Can the public see it?
Through the chair, I actually believe that so the data that we pull from the Watch Your Speed signs citywide is the data that we use to inform our overall travel time index. It is not as specific as the information that we get from our video and Bluetooth in the downtown, but it definitely gives us kind of a broad overview and sort of a comparator. And so I believe that is available on open data, but I can check and confirm back with you before too long here.
I would appreciate that, and I would consider a motion with consultation with you if there was a chance for open data. And finally, I guess my last question is, second last question. The mobile Watch Your Speed signs are typically mounted on a pole. So we have some limitations about where they go. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Could we set something up where the mobile Watch Your Speed signs are mounted on a mobile pole so that we had a little bit more flexibility?
So I'm certainly happy to take that back to staff to look into that, Councillor.
Now, the hard question. If we did that later circumstance, is there an opportunity to partner with a sponsor to, let's say they put a sticker on there or something, but also allow us to fund those mobile poles and really buy more of the signs?
So typically we don't do signage to fund safety improvements. We have had some conversations in the past around with insurance companies, mostly around education. But again, I'm happy to take that back. And I'm not saying that I know or have specific knowledge, but if somebody wanted to get into the business of saying, okay, City, you got a bunch of these signs, you know, we think you should have more, and we'd like to contribute to that, and maybe we have a little bit of advertising space to recognize our contribution. Is that something we could do? Because it's kind of like a layer on top of a layer, right? Through the speaker, I'm skeptical it is something we could do, but again, I don't know the answer, so I'm happy to take that back. I do know the answer about open data, and that data is in fact available on the city's open data portal.
Okay, great. So if, would you be comfortable agreeing to have a conversation with me later about any opportunity for an outside company to sponsor some extra of these signs, and we'll work that out another day?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. That's all my questions, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to move the item.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. Any other questions for staff? All right, so we're ready to vote on the item. This is the Watch Your Speed technology, item 2.18, non-competitive contract with Travelogix for Watch Your Speed signs for the Vision Zero Safety Plan School Safety Zone Program. Vice Chair Holiday has moved the item. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Item number 20 has a technical amendment, which we'll put on the screen. It's just to correct some wording. I've held the item, so I'll move the amendment and the item. There we go. Okay, any questions, or we're good to go? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item I have is item number 25, use of temporary delegated authority regarding procurement-related activities during Council's 2022 municipal election recess. Councillor Perks held the item. Question for staff?
Yes, thank you. So I was looking at these various contracts, and I note that something like 20 of them were approved by staff after the election, and 4 or 5 of them were actually approved after the new council had been sworn in. And I was particularly concerned with one of the ones for IT, where we purchased, it was non-exclusive suppliers. I'm just wondering, how was the decision taken on these contracts after the new council had been sworn in to do them under the delegated authority rather than bring them to the initial council meeting?
So, hang on, through the chair. We would take that delegated authority and review the contracts the same way we would for any other time. Again, applicability, and there's still a limited delegated authority. It is not the full authority of the BAP, basically. Unfortunately, I was not yet present at the time of a lot of these approvals, so I would have to look back and see what decisions were made for those specific contracts that you are noting.
Okay. Ms. Taylor, so it's Appendix A, it's the last 2 pages of it, or 3 pages of it? December 7th, December 7th, December 7th, December 21st. One of them's even after the initial organization meeting of the new council.
Sorry about this, again, through the chair. So, as stated, the City Council directed the delegated authority of Parts 1 to 28 be in effect immediately to the end of City Council meetings on July 20th, 22nd, until the first scheduled regular City Council meeting of the new term for 2022-2026. So this would have been before that first council meeting. So therefore, we still had that.
First council meeting, when the inaugural meeting of this term of council? Of November?
Correction for my part, it's the first scheduled regular council meeting.
What was that, the date of that? Sorry, I should have looked this up last night, but frankly, I was on my 25th item on this agenda and I got a little lazy.
Completely understood. The first meeting was a special meeting, which is why the authority was kept over.
Yeah, but we had some business at that special meeting. Anyway, I just think it's bad practice that after the new council is being sworn in to continue to use delegated authority, and in future, I hope we don't do it that way.
Noted. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. I'll let that go then.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. A valid point. Any other questions for staff? Councillor Holyday?
Thank you, Chair. On page 9 of the report, top item, November 23rd, 2022, contract number 470-21277. The description is to request of additional funds to cover over expenditure, pay outstanding invoices, and for any potential repairs needed until contract expiration for solid waste management services. I guess my question is to the controller. Why do we have over expenditure and outstanding invoices on a contract? I mean, I thought these things had control mechanisms that we can't go over the number. I understand you can extend contracts and so on, but why are we in a spot where we're paying invoices, outstanding invoices?
Sorry, Councillor, could you, I've lost where you were. Could you help me?
Sure. It's the first item on page 9, contract 470-21277.
Trying to get there.
Yep. If you just look at the description.
I was in the attachment, Councillor, so.
I'm sorry, you're right. It's the attachment, the chart.
Okay. Request of additional funds to cover over expenditure, payouts, and for any potential repairs needed.
Yeah, so to reform the question, just the wording of this suggests that there were outstanding invoices and over expenditure, which to me reads that commitments were made beyond the numerical value of the contract. So how do we end up in a situation like this? I understand that is different than, approaching the end of a contract and needing to extend it because there's more work to be done. Do we not have control mechanisms in place? Do we not have a cap? Let's say there's a purchase order. Do we not have a cap so that you can't spend beyond that until you get approvals? Is that the case, or is the wording wrong?
Through the chair to you, Councillor, I think it's the wording is not particularly specific. I think it's a little vague. You're absolutely right. You cannot pay for invoices that are not three-way matched, which means that it has to be, you have to agree to the purchase order. So there would be no situation where you would be paying invoices that would be in excess of the purchase order without coming back for an amendment. So I'll take it away, certainly, to talk to Solid Waste to understand the specific language on this particular contract.
So just through the chair, Councillor Holyday, there are usually POAs, purchase order amendments, that do get actually used. So maybe it's the terminology, but like Andrew said, he'll take it back.
Maybe my last question would be, does it ever happen that, a commitment is made which is beyond the authority of the contract? Then you've got an invoice, and is there consequences for that?
So, Councillor, the purchase order amendment is the additional authority that is sought. Obviously, there are delegated authorities at various levels to achieve that, but you cannot honor an invoice that is in excess of what the contract says unless there's a purchase order amendment.
Okay. And just to recap, what you told me is this is likely a wording issue as opposed to a control issue.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I had. I appreciate your answer.
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Any other questions for staff? Speakers? Okay, would someone like to move the recommendations, removing receipt? Oh, okay, I'll move receipt. Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you, Councillor Holyday. Receipt is moved. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Next item is 26. Now, there was a possibility that this was going in camera. Is that necessary?
No, Chair. I will move the item and thank staff for speaking to me offline. I understand there's a subsequent report where my questions will be addressed.
Okay. So Vice Chair Holyday is moving item 26, update on the confirmation programs remediation plans for city IT divisions, agencies, and corporations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Now, we do have, before we go to the in-camera item, we do have Councillor Fletcher's item, but she's not in the room. And I'd like her to talk to it for a few minutes. Okay, so why don't we go back to
Here's item. On Councillor Fletcher's item? Oh, okay. Oh, here she is.
Okay.
We're on your item.
So fast.
Yes, no. My campaign slogan for chairing this meeting was done by noon. I can see I can see that we're not quite there, but we're working on it. So, Councillor Fletcher, so we're at your item. Are there questions for staff?
No, I just to confirm with staff that part of modern TO is that you're moving Toronto Community Housing office headquarters, corporation headquarters into Metro Hall.
Through the chair, Councillor Fletcher, you're correct.
And that has gone through a process of announcing that to the Toronto Community Housing Board, correct?
Through the chair, Councillor Fletcher, correct.
And would I be right to say that there were concerns at the board about the location, access, just it being the kind of freestanding building that tenants and staff are used to? I don't know if you've had that feedback, but I certainly was there for that feedback.
Through the, and Pat's here too, so Councillor Fletcher, that, we were not in the conversations, but that is my understanding, so we're working with the CEO of Toronto Community Housing.
So the one, you've got two tracks. You've got a track where it's moving, I would say reluctantly moving, but doing it out of city direction, and another track where there's going to be some changes brought in at Metro Hall and even other city centers, civic centers. So it's my observation that those two tracks haven't been brought together as to what those operations and how it would impact.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's Pat Matoso, Councillor Fletcher. You are correct. So we've worked out the program requirements for TCHC, and now we've got to merge that in with the operational requirements as well.
So you've got the program requirements, which is how many staff, how many desks, how many phones.
That's correct.
But actually, the way the headquarters is currently used as a, perhaps differently than your division might use it, for seminars, for tenant meetings, for staff training, for use. And you'd agree with that that hasn't been fully looked at yet, and the impact of changes, nobody knows about that.
Through the chair, that is correct. The operational piece of it, we still need to work through.
And that the other thing is that just confirm that there's no actual operational ability for the board to meet at the new location.
That is correct.
So you've asked TCHC to move to Metro Hall through modern TO. The ability to have board meetings at the corporate headquarters is now not able to happen. And there are other changes that are being proposed that were in the budget that nobody seemed to be completely aware of that may impact, again, just the operational performance of a standalone corporation. Have I got that kind of right in broad strokes?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. So in that sense, is there a problem with really taking a pause on implementing? So bundling of services, that's also services for Toronto Community Housing and anybody else you're moving in to Metro Hall or anywhere else you're moving them. The cutback in cleaning services may impact. So is it a problem really to take a little break and make sure that these impacts aren't what I'll call unintended consequences on the changes that have been brought forward through modern TO?
Through the chair, happy to go back and come back to GGC with any potential impacts.
And that would include the CEO of Toronto Community Housing having that conversation with the board as well.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Okay, on all the impacts in these places. So that motion would be just to pause this while we look at it. Would you agree that this wasn't highlighted in the budget when we actually got it, that that wasn't clear? Sorry, Councillor Perks, Ms. Scioli can't hear me.
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor, when we looked at service impacts, we looked at it, service needs from a hybrid work model, and possibly needed to look at it a little further from other aspects and other operational requirements.
And the operational requirements in public buildings as well.
That is correct.
These are all public buildings that, sorry, I'm sorry, am I over my time?
No, you've got time, but we want to leave some time for Josie here to respond to.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to augment what Pat was saying, Councillor Fletcher. So through the chair, this will be effective in later in April. We will be speaking to the CEO of Toronto Community Housing, and we will work through the needs of Toronto Community Housing. I want you to know that we have committed to that.
Thank you.
So, and I think that's a key point that we're going to work through that.
And I'm just asking, I see Ms. Taylor's here, where in the budget was it really clear that the city-owned public buildings that are our houses of the city and have been forever, including pre-amalgamation, that there would be service level cuts in these locations?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, the corporate real estate management budget notes actually detailed where there were reductions in their budget, and it referenced open hours of Toronto-owned buildings, specifically to the level of TCHC. I'm looking at Pat, that wasn't in there, but the reduction in hours and some of the details around that on a higher level basis were made available.
Was there clear that there might be an impact on cleanliness in any buildings with the reduction?
I'm sorry, Councillor, I didn't hear.
A reduction of the things, a reduction in cleaning, reduction in service levels. I'm talking about in our city-owned, Tobico Civic
Through the
Center,
chair to
East
Councillor
York
Fletcher.
Civic Center, City Hall.
Okay, last question. We're at 6 minutes.
Thank you, thank you.
So through the chair to you, Councillor Fletcher, the service levels for cleaning are adjusted to the building occupancy levels. So the level of cleaning wouldn't decrease. It's the level of cleaning would be adjusted based on the occupancy levels in the building. Not that the buildings would be any less cleanliness.
Pre-pandemic or post? Oh, is Pat not here?
No, just basically based on the current cleanliness of the buildings that we set as a result of COVID. So our standards have not changed.
Okay, all right. Councillor Holiday.
So I just want to touch on that point that was just covered. The occupancy level of City Hall, Metro Hall, and Civic Centers is different following the pandemic. Is that correct?
Through the chair to you, Councillor Holiday, that is correct.
It's less.
It is.
Okay, so the proposal that went through budget was to adjust the cleaning services so that they match the new occupancy level.
That is correct. And what I will add, though, as the occupancy levels, again, increase, then we would adjust the level of service to match the occupancy levels.
Right, because you aim and target a certain level of cleanliness.
Yeah, our standard for cleaning is the same.
Right.
We've set it based on the learnings from COVID. So from that perspective, the same level of cleaning is done whether one person in the building or 100 people are in the building or 1,000 people, and we would adjust the service based on the occupancy levels. So we based on the service level affordability measures we put in the budget. Now that as the hybrid models people start returning, we would adjust as more people would come into the buildings.
Okay. So Councillor Fletcher has very wisely pointed out that there is a change happening at Metro Hall. TCHC is moving in. And I think, to paraphrase Councillor Fletcher's concern, she wants to make sure that despite the changes to the services, the move is going to be taken into account, and those services will then be rebalanced and adjusted.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Hawley, that is correct. But on twofold. One from occupancy perspective, and then one from an operational perspective to ensure that, from TCHE's perspective, that their client services part of the service that they deliver to tenants is not affected.
Do you foresee in the currently proposed changes any concerns about the general health and safety requirements for city staff and the public?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Holiday, through the COVID pandemic, we've taken a series of measures to ensure indoor air quality is to the highest standard it can be, and the cleaning standards are the highest they can be.
Do you need to pause the changes that you're doing at all of the civic centers in order to accommodate the move of TCHC into Metro Hall?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Holiday, I think it'd be wise for CREM just to take a step back and just see what other service level impacts there may be to other divisions in the Civic Center, including the clerk's office, to make sure that we've got everything covered. So I don't see this being...
Do you need a directive to require you to pause the reduction in service levels in order to do that?
Whether it comes through a directive, we can pause it. I mean, we're fine with the motion or the report or letter as fine with us. I mean, the changes wouldn't go into effect till April 19th, so coming back the day after to GGC won't be an issue.
Well, and finally, coming back to GGC is one thing, but this committee could decide all sorts of things on that date.
Through the chair, we'll ensure that we've covered off all of any sort of impacts to any potential divisions, including the clerk's office and agencies moving into any of the city facilities to ensure that we've covered everything off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Are there any other questions for staff? Any speakers on the item? Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you, and I won't be very long because I want you to be as close to 12 as possible. But what I'm observing, and I thank you for agreeing to look at this again, is we do have a number of things going on with modern TO, and everybody's been here except Councillor Bravo to understand that already there's other organizations that have moved into Metro Hall, assuming that we're using a different model. We're trying to get those who have standalone buildings out of the buildings and into existing locations. So I just want to make sure that we don't have two tracks going on at the same time and that we have one track. So when we're talking about the building use and occupancy, I mean, Create TO has already moved there during the pandemic. There's other, 311 is out of there. They may be expanding. TCHC, the one I'm most familiar with, is moving much reluctantly, I'll use that word. And so I just want to make sure as well, Ms. Scioli, that all of the agencies, is it TTC, where are they moving, Hydro, that everybody is being funneled into city buildings and that we don't do one thing while we're doing another. So that's part of this pause for you to actually look at everything. And I think GGC probably should just look at all the rest of modern TO and where people are going. This isn't Diaz Road. This is a public building. And I think I want to make that distinction. I think Diaz Road, is it in your ward? Diaz Road? No.
Yes. Yes.
Is it yours? Anyway, it's not the Eastern Avenue transportation place. These are public buildings, and there's just an onus on us to make sure, as we're changing use in there, that we're very clear that we're keeping them as open, public, beautiful places that they all are, including what will shortly be the new Etobicoke Civic Center, which will be probably the nicest ones that we have when it gets built, compared to what it is right now, which is not one of the nicest ones. It's a beautiful building. Okay, it's a little tired. Yes, it's very clean. I hear.
All right,
Councillor
thank
Morley
you.
cleaned it. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Anyone to speak? Anyone else? Councillor Bravo and then Councillor Holyday.
I want to thank Councillor Fletcher for bringing this forward. I think that this pause is really important because of the obligation to make sure that a public building with really vital frontline public services, particularly I'm thinking about Toronto Community Housing, is accessible and is continues to function in the way it should. But I think that the caution around stepping back and taking a more macro view of the movements that are taking place and co-locations and relocations is something that this committee should take up as a task, and I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. To answer Councillor Fletcher's earlier question for the chair, Dias Road is not in my area. I do have a very similar sounding street, but that is not the building in my area. Thank you for asking. Councillor Holyday.
Thank you, Chair, and I will thank Councillor Fletcher for posing important questions, and I think these are things that the committee should consider. However, I don't agree with Councillor Fletcher's methodology, and here's why. The idea that you immediately pause any changes means that where a change is appropriate to do, it gets paused anyways. And I think that there's no harm in bringing a report which looks at these particular items, but issuing a directive that tells staff not to change anything in the interim could lead to be counterproductive or could lead to waste. And so I do not think it's prudent or required to tell people not to change anything. I think the questions were raised and staff indicated that they're approaching this with caution and they're working through it. I have faith in their ability to do so. So I'm going to vote against the item, and it's not because I don't want to think about these concerns in the future. It's just I do not think it's necessary to tie the hands of staff between now and April when they have clearly thought and prepared this through. So I will not vote for the item, and that is the reason why.
Any other speakers on the item? Okay. All those in favor? A recorded vote? Okay, fair enough. All those in favor? Councillor Perks, Councillor Bravo, Councillor Pasternak. I don't know about and against? Councillor Holiday. That carries. If it is the will of committee, we're close to finishing actually, but I do need a motion to work through part of the lunch hour. If it's the will of committee, we will continue on and finish the agenda. Moved by Councillor Perks. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So we're now going to item 214. There has been a request to do parts of this in camera, so I might...
in public, yeah.
Sorry?
Want to start in public if I could?
We could. I
have to establish some facts before I can ask my in-camera question, and I can't ask public questions to establish those facts if I'm in camera.
Okay, so fair enough. We will start. First of all, the first part is public, so staff are welcome to stay. Once we go in camera, only the staff tied to this issue should be in the room. So, Councillor Perks, actually, Councillor Holiday, you held the...
Sorry, did you extend the...
Could I?
We did.
It's in my ward, yeah.
That's fair enough. You held the item, just as required.
It's committee, we can...
Okay,
yeah.
So, Councillor Perks, questions for staff.
So, a piece of tunnel boring equipment, a micro tunnel boring piece, got tangled up in some metal, and we're now having to approve a contract to try to rescue the tunnel bore without causing the building that it's tangled up with to fall down. Is that kind of where we are?
Through you, the chair. Yes, there is a tunnel boring machine that's tangled up with the tiebacks that were used for the construction of the buildings. Those tiebacks are not impacting the existing buildings no longer. So they were used to anchor the shoring as for construction purposes.
Okay, so the building isn't at risk?
No.
No, okay. But nevertheless, this expensive tunnel boring machine is at risk, and we got to figure out how to get it there, get it out of there and finish the very important basement flooding work it was doing.
Yeah, so through you, the chair, the boring machine is in the alignment of the future sewer that is being upgraded. And because of the entanglement with the tiebacks, it kind of shifted a little bit, and then what it ended up doing was compromising the road base, and there was a little bit of a erosion that took place, and that was fixed under an emergency, and we had to stabilize the ground, and then what we ended up doing was from the exit shaft, we started hand digging and machine digging through to try to rescue from the other side. So in order for us to complete this work, we need to extract this machine.
Okay, and once the contract we're about to approve extracts the machine and completes the tunnel necessary?
The contract that you're approving is for the cost of the extraction of the machine.
Okay.
You already have a budget in place for the sewer work?
Okay, so once we get this thing out, the wet weather flow related tunnel will still be constructible. That's not at risk.
That's correct.
Okay. Next issue. The tiebacks. How is it we were not aware that they were there?
So through you, the chair, we, to the best of my knowledge, we do not keep a mapped data of a record of where the tiebacks are. They come in as an application, and they come in as an application for construction, and then a permit is issued. So maybe that's something that transportation can speak to more clearly on this.
There is a record. There is a record.
Point of order?
Hold it.
I want to flag or ask if legal staff or transportation staff are monitoring the line of questions in the event that
I'm
any
being
of these
very
need to go
careful,
on
Councillor
camera.
Holiday. I'm being very careful, and I do have sharper questions that I will ask in camera. Okay, so when the condominium is constructed, they needed tiebacks. We gave a permit for below ground construction, and somewhere on that permit it will say that it is being tied back. Am I correct about that?
Through you, the chair, I think I'm going to have transportation respond to that.
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor Perks.
Okay. And the contract to do this wet weather flow tunnel, who did the design work for it and the locates and due diligence? What was that, city staff? Was that a contracted firm? Who did that?
So through the chair, this would have been done through program management work by a consultant.
By a consultant. Okay. Those are my public questions.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Holiday?
I've got a few public ones as well. I think they should be safe, and if they're not, please let me know. Safe to be in public, I should say, or correct to be in public. Just generally speaking, this tunnel machine was proceeding in a southerly direction along Old Mill Drive towards Bloor Street. Is that correct?
Through you, the chair, that's correct.
And it passed the TTC tunnel, and it looks like by the close to the end of the run is where it got tangled up with a piece of metal.
Through you, the chair, that is correct.
Do we know, was the piece of metal the first tieback, the northerly-most tieback of the building, or is it somewhere in the middle of the building? Is it close to the end of the run?
Through you, the chair, we're not entirely certain as to which tiebacks that would be.
Is it close to the north end of the building or close to the south end of the building where it's been stopped?
I think we would have to investigate that.
Okay. Do I understand the report? Well, actually, I don't understand the full statement in the report that there was a vertical deviation in the micro tunneling machine. Can you explain that to me?
Yep. Through the chair, yeah, the deviation occurred when the tunnel machine hit the tieback. That's what caused it to deviate.
Was it on target before it hit the tieback?
It was, yeah. There's a navigation system in the tunneling machine that was monitored from a control room.
Approximately what depth is it at?
18 meters.
18 meters. And just help me understand the contractual relationship. There is a contractor that is building the sewer along Old Mill Drive, and there is a subcontractor that was doing the micro tunneling for the contractor. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. There's a general contractor that does certain work, and they've engaged a subcontractor for the specialized tunneling work.
Okay, and then this particular procurement is for what in relation to those two other contracts?
This non-competitive procurement?
Right.
Yeah, that's to rescue the tunnel boring machine.
It's to rescue the tunnel boring machine, and who is the contractor that you're being suggested to give approval to? Is it the micro tunneling contractor? Is it the overall contractor, or is it a completely different one?
It's the general contractor.
The general contractor. So there's a contract to pay the general contractor to rescue its subcontractor's tunnel boring machine.
Yes, that would be the non-competitive procurement.
And why is it the city is conducting the procurement as opposed to the general contractor themselves? And if that is not something we can discuss in public, that's fine.
That's a gray area. Liability is the road you're going down. If you're going down the liability road, you'll have to wait.
We'll wait on the answer to that question. And are there any other contracts or elements as the result of this circumstance beside the rescue that we should be in consideration of the complete situation? Something that's not before us yet or has been already before us? Or is this the singular event that is required to put all of this back on track?
Through you, the chair, no, this is the singular one that is necessary. In fact, once we are able to rescue this machine, we will be on track to complete the work, and we're expecting all the underground sewer work to be completed in June and have all the final restoration done and have it all accessible by the public by August of 2023.
Okay. I think that's all my public questions, Mr. Chair. Unless something inspires me, we'll go to a second round with your indulgence, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holyday. Any other public questions at this time? I just have one. Who owns the boring machine? Who owns the boring machine? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you.
Through you, the chair, the boring machine is owned by the subcontractor.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there are no other questions in public, if it's the will of committee, we'll leave speaking. If speaking after we arise a report from in camera.
Perfect.
Mr. Chair, may I have a make a point of order just before we move on?
Councillor Matlow?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I've been having trouble with my computer throughout this entire meeting, and I wasn't able to vote on a matter that I'd very much like to. And I'd really appreciate if we could just reopen it so that I could be on the record because it's a recorded vote, which was Councillor Fletcher's GG 2.27.
You'd like to move to reopen? Okay.
Simply just so that I can be recorded in the affirmative.
Okay.
I don't think you can reopen.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could get advice from the clerk, was Councillor Matlow connected to the meeting when we voted? No. Then.
No.
No. So our rules are that if you're not present, we cannot re-vote on an item with a different composition of the committee.
My understanding, a motion to reopen is always
the
in
challenge
order.
was that I wasn't able to be connected at the time, not because of my choosing, just I couldn't connect.
Yeah, look, my understanding, a motion to reopen is always in order. Whether it carries or not is another.
To reconsider?
Point of order, Speaker. It's once, Chair, because whatever might change the outcome, you don't re-vote if somebody wasn't in the room. If they were there and they want to change their vote, that's pretty accepted. But if you weren't there and the clerk is nodding, that would not be, according to Hoyle, to operate in that way. I think we should be really clear on that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so, okay, I'm getting a lot of advice here. Councillor Matlow, I think.
want advice from the clerk.
The prevailing advice is we cannot reconsider the item. However, this is going to council, And I would suggest that you have a recorded vote when that item lands on the council floor.
May I ask, just for clarity, is there not latitude considered, though, when it comes to, like, physically it's different because you can choose to be there or not, but if you can't choose to be, and if it's the technology that obstructs you, is there no latitude?
Is the chair being
considered?
challenged?
Councillor Matlow, first of all, I'm actually sympathetic to your situation because of our hybrid environment. And I also do not think the outcome would change at all with your participation in a reconsideration. But the ruling is that under these circumstances, a motion to reconsider is not in order. If you'd like to challenge the chair, we can put that to a vote. But I will say that this item will be on the council floor, and you're welcome to request a recorded vote when that is debated before council.
I accept your ruling, and I'll do so.
Thank you very much, Councillor Matlow. Okay, we need a motion to go in camera. Yeah, it has to be read into the public record. Councillor Perks, would you like to?
I move that the General Government Committee recess its public session to meet in closed session to consider a matter about litigation or potential litigation that affects the City of Toronto.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So we would ask all those staff who are not connected with this matter to leave the room, including members of the general public. tunneling boring machine on Old Mill Drive for assignment under Basement Flooding Protection Program Phase 4. Are there questions for staff? Are there speakers? Councillor Holyday.
Just like to place a motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, if we can put that on the screen. Yeah, speak to your motion.
We just, sorry, I added, well, it had not been moved, so I had no reason to.
Okay, any questions for the mover? Any other speakers? No, we can put this to a vote. It is on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. The item is amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We will do, it's a little bit of a rarity for this committee, some confirmatory bills because of the statutory public hearings. They'll be on the screen in a second.
It's just the one motion.
And Councillor Bravo, would you like to read the motion?
Sure thing, Chair. The confirmation bills to confirm the legislative proceedings of the General Government Committee acting under delegated authority at meeting 2 on March 3rd, 2023 be declared as bylaws and passed subject to section 226.9 of the City of Toronto Act 2006.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That concludes our business for today. Thank you very much. Clerk staff, city staff, members of the public, be safe. I understand Councillor Perks has volunteered to come to your homes and help clear sidewalks. Should he be needed. All the best. Thank you very much.